He is Bob Pollock from the Extension Service, and you can give him a call right now at 479-1160 or 349-WCCS. If yuns have a question about yards and gardens and such. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's cold.
It is chilly.
You told me
it's here.
You told me the other day I could wait until the frost comes to kill off those flowers, and then I could save the seeds. And I guess that time's about here, isn't it?
I think you might have had a couple so far.
Yeah. No, we haven't had any frost.
You didn't get any the other night? Okay.
No.
Well, then it's been pretty consistent.
Yeah.
A lot of times there'll be some variability around the county, and especially in those valleys and
So
farther north.
Last week I should say, we were talking about the garden and getting the garden ready for the fall and doing things that are going to enrich your soil over the winter time. We've talked about certain shrubs, getting them ready for the fall as well. And in particular, I'll just use this as an example, my blueberry bushes, which aren't in the right kind of soil. They're in more of a clay type of soil, and I need to increase the acidity of the soil underneath them. Do I do that now, or do I wait until the spring?
You want to do that as soon as you can do that.
Oh, yeah.
Like last year. Okay. Actually,
last year.
Actually, before you planted them, would have been the best time.
Well, they had a huge harvest for just spindly little plants. The bushes themselves, they don't increase at all, but the number of berries on them every year does.
Well, you are fortunate.
Yeah.
Because we want the plant to grow also, and we want to be able to. Normally, we would annually prune those. Now, how many years have you had those in the ground?
Those have been in there at least 10.
Okay. And so by now, we should have a mature, what we would call a mature plant or an established plant that would annually, we could go in and prune 2 or 3 of the main canes out, the oldest, biggest, thickest ones, which helps signal the plant to rejuvenate itself or grow new shoots. And then by doing that, that just helps keep the plant healthy, a little bit younger. So we can have about 12 to 15 stems is typically what we're shooting for in an established plant.
Okay.
So it'll take 5 to 6 years to do that.
After all these years, there's still just the main stalk is it coming up out of the ground.
So it's a wonder that it's still living. It's hanging on.
Yeah.
And it's trying to produce fruit, probably to try to save itself and go to seed.
Well, there were 6 of them.
Start over again.
There were 6 of them, and the one just gave up the ghost this year. But the other 5, they're healthy, and they're shooting out the berries, but they're just not increasing in plant.
Because we'd like to see 1, 2, 3 new stems come up from the base of the plant every year, because those are replacement branches.
Okay.
And so the younger you keep it, the more productive it will be as well. So that's why we're kind of trying to get into where we have 2 or 3 stems that are 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old. So that gives us our 12 to 15 stems that are in there in that plant. Some varieties vary a little bit. Some are a little less vigorous. Some are more vigorous. Some are, will be a little shorter, others will be a little taller, some will be a little they'll just kind of grow out versus growing up. But we're still trying to shoot for that 12 to 15 canes in an established plant.
Okay. That ain't happening with these ones.
So, yeah, you need, and it may not have that good of a root system either. You may be able to, when it goes dormant here soon, and as we move into fall, if you need to move plants or lift plants, once they lose their leaves, that's a great time to, if you need to move them or make some changements, especially in soil pH, because we really need, whether we're trying to make the ground more acidic, which we have to do for blueberries, we want it to be about 4 or 5 on the pH scale, 4 or 5 to 5. Or if we're trying to increase the alkalinity and apply lime, that whether we put lime on or whether we put sulfur on to acidify it, we need to work that into the soil. It does its best work when it's mixed in, and so then it can adjust the pH, it still takes time. We're talking months to a year, probably more time to change it to more acidic and a little bit less time when we apply lime to make it more alkaline. Mm-hmm. But still, it takes months, up to a year, to make that change. And the more we mix that lime or sulfur into the soil, into the root zone of where the plants are going to be growing, the roots are going to be growing, the better off we're going to be, and the more effective we're going to be.
Mm-hmm. Does that same concept apply to blackberries, raspberries, those sorts of plants?
Yeah, the same concept applies. We're just trying to get, for that particular plant, get the best conditions in place for it to do well. Mm-hmm. So the blackberries and black raspberries and those other cane type plants, they can grow in a higher pH. So 6.2 to 6.8 are a good range for them, which is similar to other vegetables.
All righty, there you go. This has been...
But now's a good time.
Now's the time to do that.
Because you allow yourself over the winter. Now, granted, there's not as much happening in the soil over the winter because it gets cold. So everything slows down. All those microbial activities and things that are going on in the soil slow down during the winter months. But still, you'll have what's left of fall. You'll have the first part of spring and a little bit of activity in between to help get those processes happening so that we can affect that pH change.
Just a question about, and we talk about this every year at about this time, people who have brought their outdoor plants indoors now, and the need to check them for various outdoor insects that have come in with them. Just give us an overview of what needs to be done with those plants that have been spending their days outside and now they're coming inside and staying there.
And hopefully you thought of that a couple of nights ago when we started dipping down, below the 50s or definitely the 40s to get those plants in that are normally like it to be 70 or above.
Yeah.
Because that will shock them a little bit. And you may see some drooping or something as well if you left them out too long and bring them in. So inspect the leaves, look at the top of the leaves, look at the bottom of the leaves, especially look at the bottom, because there's a number of insects that will not feed on top, they will feed on the underside of the leaf.
And they don't always look like insects when you look at them, do they?
No. Some might look like, some may be actually predators. So some could be lady beetle, could be ladybugs. They could be the larvae of ladybugs, which don't look anything like the adults. Mm-hmm. Or they could be aphids. They could be scales. So a scale is an insect, but it may not look like an insect. It doesn't. There's only maybe one stage of its life cycle where it's crawling around, and of course they call that the crawler stage. Huh. But that's right after the eggs hatch, and that's for a scale. That's the crawler stage. That's where they're motile. They move around, then they settle down, build a waxy or cottony mass around their bodies to protect them, and then they just sit there, and then they feed from that spot. Mm-hmm. So they may be white or gray or darker color, and they can be on the undersides of the leaf. They can be along the petiole, which is the little stem attached to the leaf. They could be on the branches. So scales will tend to be more so on the stems and the branches, but they also will be on the foliage. Okay. So look for that. There can be some things in the soil. You may have leaves in there. You may have other organic debris. So we can get some sow bugs and some things like that are more soil. They live in the soil. Mm-hmm. So those things might be in the soil. So check the top inch of soil for those. And then
if you find them, run away screaming?
Yeah. Well, you could pull them out and put them outside. Okay. Of course, the scales and aphids and things, aphids, they go from egg, well, actually they're born alive, so they're not coming from an egg. The adult gives birth to live young. Mm-hmm. They look similar to the adult, but they're much smaller. And they crawl around. Oftentimes they'll be camouflaged. They'll look the same color as the leaf, so you've got to look closely. But they're big enough usually that you can see them moving around. Mm-hmm. And you can wipe those off.
Okay.
Just clean them up. And you may have dust on the plants. It's good to get them wiped down. And
dust your plants.
Yeah.
All right. Dust your plants. This has been Bug Talk with Bob Pollock this morning. It's a shorter segment. I don't know why. More football talk at the bottom of the hour has led to our having to cut short this conversation, as fascinating as it is.
That's right.
It is the voice of Indiana County.
We can't interrupt the news.
No, we can't do
8
that.
o'clock.
We can't do that.